Let's get it going. Okay, I'm just going to open with a couple of words about why I think we've brought together the most relevant group of people for any conversation about AI transformation at the enterprise level. I think certainly every conversation I've been having with business leaders over the last year or so has been about unlocking the commercial value of AI. For me, there's really no way to do that without thinking or rethinking how we actually do the actual work. And if we're rethinking how we do the work, then we're necessarily rethinking the organization itself. So the topic of this panel is reimagining the creative enterprise. I think it's a task that we need to get done as a sector. And I don't think that there's any way to meaningfully do that without working with one or all of the partners of the companies that we have on stage today. So we have a representative from every sort of step, every link in the AI value chain, at least as I see it, from experience and expression where brands meet culture, represented by Jimmie Stone, who's VP of Creative Shop globally at Meta, and Varun Parmar, who is the general manager for Firefly Enterprise and Gen Studio at Adobe, to the insights and the data that inform the right decisions and the targeting, which is represented by Bianca Pryor, who is a data scientist from NVIDIA, and obviously the scale and the infrastructure needed to support these systems that are going to change how we do business. And that's represented by Chris Ziemer here from AWS, who leads media and entertainment monetization there. Thank you very much for joining us. I think I got everyone's names and job titles correct. There's a great group of people we got here. I'm going to start with Jimmie, if you don't mind. So, Jimmie, I've heard you talk a lot about the need for marketers to start with culture. And I'm just wondering how you're looking at the general state of creativity today in an AI-infused era that we're in already.
Well, it's a small question. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, and my pleasure to be here. First time in CES. This is not necessarily my pawn. I'm more into Cannes, and then being here is amazing. Super, super impressed. But as sitting and hearing the panelists before, it became very clear. There's a sense of optimism now, and like Sir Martin said, now is that time from wow. I was remember 3 years ago talking about the importance of AI coming in, and everybody in the creative field or the creative class fearing about it. But today it's evident. You know, I always start by saying that creative will be automated. There's no question in my mind. But creativity will never be. Creativity is a human ability to empathize and to see and to imagine the future that never existed. And that is something that, that is becoming very, very clear at the state of AI right now. That's why I'm very optimistic. But and of course, we talked about it, that AI has been present in everything. Machine learning has been incredibly important for Meta ecosystem of canvases, interconnected canvases, to be one of the most important delivery systems in the world. And you know, the right audience to the right time at the right moment, that those things has been forever. But now Gen AI is coming in to help that. And so the question is why? You know, not about if AI, is why. And so what we're seeing is that this ecosystem of interconnected canvases, or the attention economy, basically is moved into social and how everything is connected down. Billions of people come to our platform every day. 3.2 billion people come to our platform every single day to connect to each other, to brands, to connect, to create subcultures, and subcultures create cultures of today. And the amount of content that is being generated is exorbitantly accelerating. In fact, 3.5 billion reels are shared every single day. That's double from last year. There was 2 billion. And combine that with this AI distribution system, discovery engine, sophistication, getting even more sophisticated as the complexity grows. You know, 50% of the Instagram recommendations is made in AI, doubly from last year. So when you combine that, we say to our clients, we're in the creative shop. We help our clients best perform with creativity in our platform. We say you have to originate from culture, with the language and the grammar of culture, using the native tools and the formats. Then you have to collaborate with culture, with the importance of with the creators, working with creators. And last and more importantly, right now, you have to produce at the speed of culture. And that's why it's critical that we, in the marketing industry, start to move from that idea of a big idea, one matching executions, to a systems of ideas, multiple executions, constantly over time, because the expectations of this complex ecosystem is more individualized content to them. That's why Gen AI is critical to help accelerate the process of great speed, quality, and cost.
Amazing, man. Thank you. What do you see as the challenges of brand? Like what you described sounds like a tempo shift and sort of a mindset shift for the average marketer. Is it challenging for them to adopt these new ways of working?
Yes, and I think I will quickly pass it to the esteemed panelists. But what I would say is, like, I will encourage the industry to start thinking not so much about outwardly, it's internally in the organization. I mean, we're entering into a complex world, more than complicated world. And in a complex world, it's critical that organizations move from an organizational mentality to an organism, become more fluid, less silos. And so the key is not so much about how you're going to incorporate Gen AI into the process to accelerate the speed and quality necessary to feed the distribution system and the appetite for individualization at scale. The key is how you organize your teams in an organism mentality. And that's going to be what I recommend everybody to start. Like, it's an organizational change, not so much about accepting AI. It's about how your organization is ready when AI comes in.
From organization to organism. I'm going to be stealing that talking point moving forward. Maybe I'll throw it down to Varun, because obviously Adobe is very much engaged in giving enterprise the ability to express their brand in culture. Maybe you could unpack for us a bit how that landscape is changing with the kind of tools that you've been bringing to market in the last year or so.
Yeah, really excited to be here on the panel. So I think there's actually a great example to share with all of you here. There's this brand new application called Gen Studio for Performance Marketing that we recently released, and we have a really large customer, tens of billions of dollars in revenue. And one of the things that you need to do in the product is to actually establish your brand guidelines, right? How do you make sure that the piece of content that's being produced by this Gen AI model is actually compliant with your brand guidelines? And it was really fascinating to see the journey that this customer went through over a couple of months, where they've got like tens of thousands, of marketers all over the world. And they could not point us to a brand guideline that was consistent across all the teams. Everybody had their own version, a derivative of what the brand was. So I think one of the big things is not just like how can you use Gen AI to actually create content that's on brand, but actually also start to drive consistency across business units, across geographies. And what's really fascinating for someone like me, who's a product person, is actually to see that the instantiation of the brand in this global organization that's close to 100 billion in revenues is actually in this Gen AI first product. And so they're actually asking all of their marketers to go to the product to actually understand what the brand guidelines are, and then start to surface it across these different workflows to make sure it's consistently applied across different geographies. So that's a very tangible example of how Gen AI, and maybe a side impact of it, is driving some business outcomes.
I think that's super relevant. My experience, the brand guideline in its sort of static form is typically a PDF that floats around an organization and gets edited iteratively in multiple different places, and it's not fit for purpose for how brands go to market today. So we absolutely need something that's more intelligent, that's more fluid, that's more responsive to the needs of the organization in different markets. I wonder, as a product person, Varun, are you talking mostly to the CIO or the CMO? Are you seeing a collaboration between those two different functions? Is it a collaboration? Where are you seeing that relationship work successfully?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. In some organizations, we find CMOs are sort of driving the charter around embracing these new technologies. Why? Because they have certain business outcomes to drive. I think the panel before us actually articulated it really, really well, where the demand of content is increasing. In fact, we actually have a study at Adobe which says that there is a need for 5x more content in the next 2 years. Just take a second to think about that. 5 times more content in the next 2 years. The challenge is, I don't know of a CMO or an enterprise where the budgets for marketing is going up by 5x in the next 2 years. And therein lies the opportunity for a technology like GenAI to actually drive results. So we are seeing CMOs basically embrace that, GenAI in more proactive ways than in the past because of this huge need that they are responsible for in their respective organizations to deliver. At the same time, CIOs and CTOs, who generally tend to be the innovators in the organization in embracing new technology, are also starting to drive those things. But like our point of view is that, for the first time, there is actually, a reason for these two functions to actually come together and co-innovate on a single business outcome. It's not the CIO or the CTO saying that I'm going to be responsible for infrastructure and training and data cleanliness and performance and so on and so forth, which is the nuts and bolts of how the infrastructure works. Or the CMO saying, I have this wishful requirement of what I want this technology to do, which is not grounded in the reality of what can be done. But for the first time, you have a consistent and coherent sort of outcome that you're trying to drive, in this case, the 5x outcomes without increasing the budget, where both the functions have to come together to deliver that.
I would say I'm seeing a desire, certainly a demand for 5x the amount of content like today, let alone in 2 years where we're going with the proliferation of channels and customer touch points. But obviously, enterprise needs to be able to make more content at a level of consistency and quality. It's not just about making more, it's about what to make. Maybe Bianca, we could move to you and how do you think AI is helping companies with data and insights and helping businesses to make better decisions?
Yeah, thank you. So glad to be here. I think that, as we heard Jimmie say, we heard Varun say, that the volume of content and creative being pushed out into the world is immense. So as a result of that, there's so much data behind that, right? So we're talking petabytes and terabytes of data now. Even if you think about, subscribers on streaming platforms, that begets, more rows of data that you have to figure out how to manipulate. And I see that as like a treasure trove. That's where the magic is at. And don't just sit on it, do something with it, run that Markov chain, run that propensity model, get down and dirty with it and really understand the treasure trove that you truly are sitting on. And I think that's where NVIDIA comes in, and we have a data science stack. Most folks know us for our GPUs and our hardware, but we have a lot more higher in the stack that we can offer. One of them is Rapids. We also have Polars, which is accelerated GPUs. So there's quite a bit that can help with the speed ups of all that. So I'm not saying, hey, move away from your Databricks or your Snowflake. If that's in your existing ecosystem, that's fine. But, explore, tinker. And I think that's the exciting part of machine learning and AI, and that's where the future is really at, is that experimentation and giving you those speed ups for your data science workloads.
Thank you. So moving into a world of content abundance and data abundance and needing to operate the systems and the mindset shifts necessary to do business in this new landscape. Chris, maybe you could share some insight on how you're supporting the companies that you're working with in that respect. Like, what are the use cases that you're seeing in Gen AI from the hyperscaler point of view?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Monks, for putting this together. It's been an amazing afternoon. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. 5x proliferation of content is a crazy number, and I think, Bianca, you hit the nail squarely on the head. Where's it all going to go, right? We have this incredible fragmentation of audience happening, right? I think the Paramount example from earlier was amazing. Their release and the 70 different versions that went across 70 different targeted platforms is a great example of how Gen AI can inform the entire content supply chain and get it to the right audience at the right time. So all of this comes through audience understanding, right? And all of that is done via data, right? So, when we think about the infrastructure necessary to support all of that, there are a few elements. One is the data foundation, right? What we often see across our customers, across media and entertainment, games and sports, which we represent, is these kind of siloed data stores, right? right? The data owned by the office of the CMO can't touch the data owned by the office of the CRO, and where are all the ad transaction logs going, right? That all really needs to be aggregated, unified, made actionable and interoperable, right? We talk a lot about Gen AI's capabilities in content creation. I agree that it's not, I love the comment, it won't put the creative out of work, right? It'll increase the creative's, efficiency, but don't overlook the good meat and potatoes work Gen AI can do in just analyzing petabytes of data at scale, exabytes of data at scale, right? In service of audience understanding, targeting. The Delta examples were great examples of that, right? So all of that comes from a sound data foundation. That comes first and foremost, right? Then we look at the models that we're using, right? So, we have our Bedrock managed service, which gives choice of foundation models based on the use case, right? We introduced Amazon Nova, which is setting a new bar for price and performance at scale, greatly enhanced video semantic understanding capabilities for a certain set of use cases, right? We work with variety across, and choosing the right model for the use case is critical to successful Gen AI completion. Then how you structure the POC. We agree that 2024, we call it the year of the POC, and 2025 is the year of the execution, right? What we saw our customers do successfully in 2024, where they were successful, was, first understand the legal boundaries that you have to be working within. Somebody mentioned earlier the concerns around using your intellectual property to train models, right? Make sure, clear that first, right? Then, what models will you use, and do you have a very, very sound business case that you're working backward from, right? So once all that's in place, we can move forward, and we are starting to see this in 2025, right? The progress has been very real.
Yeah, I agree with the general sense of the zeitgeist. We've seen last year, and actually slightly the year before, was very much like prototypes, proofs of concepts, maybe some pilots. Open question to the panel, and we can look at this from a creative point of view, or from a tooling point of view, from an infrastructure point of view. Like, are you seeing any successful cases of companies going from POC to more meaningful scale? Because I think one of the places where enterprise is getting bogged down is, one of the things I'm seeing repeatedly is lots and lots of POCs being run across an organization. But Chris, you mentioned like data siloing as one of the challenges to actually moving the needle at meaningful scale. I wonder if any of you have any insights you might share on that transition.
Yeah, no, I think there are plenty of successful examples of production usage or deployments of Gen AI. Talking specifically about Adobe, we have Firefly Services, which is our set of foundational models, multimodal. And we have PepsiCo and Gatorade in particular that has actually embraced the technology and delivered what I think is a very compelling use case. So if you go to Pepsi.com and specifically Gatorade website, you can actually design a bottle and you can personalize it. And all of that experience is actually powered by Firefly. And there's hundreds of thousands of experiences, folks have actually had, using designing of that bottle, which is all powered through this, Gen AI, models from Adobe. That's one example. The other example I would give is Adobe itself. Our global marketing organization over the last 18 months has gone through a massive transformation where 100% of emails that we send out in North America, the content for it, which is the creative, the copy, the call to action, the stitching of that into an experience, 100% of our emails in North America are being powered through our Gen AI products. And just to give you an approximation, there's about 8 billion emails that we send out every single year, globally. And that's a real example of in production where we're seeing some really, really meaningful business outcomes in terms of, faster, cheaper, better.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're seeing a few in advertising, where I spent kind of the last year, working. Things like contextual advertising, which is doing a lot of things, right? So analyzing video for mood and sentiment, creating a little metadata corpus out of that, and mapping it to a taxonomy, be it IAB or GARM or a custom taxonomy, and using that to inform the programmatic bid stream to pull down content or ads contextually relevant to the content, right? So that's helping with brand brand safety. It's helping with measurement and solving for the signal loss that we see and the loss of fidelity in the identifiers. That same technology, we're using things to QC the ad creative, right? It's this big influx of programmatic, demand coming, and the human QC teams aren't able to keep up. So, that's a great example of automating processes to gain efficiency, analyzing for ad break detection, right? Where's the most relevant place to place the ad? Now, even in like live news content, right? We won't show the Delta ad if we're talking about a plane crash, for example. You don't pull down another one. And then just efficiency in ad operations, right? Self-service campaign planning, self-service campaign managing, inventory optimization. So it's a lot happening.
Yeah, I'll be real quick here, but I think it's the companies that can show me the business value and back it up with a claim. So one that comes to mind is Vault AI. They're actually off our hardware, and I use them in my former life. And so they call themselves predictive content intelligence. And you give them a dynamic piece of STEM, so it could be a pilot, lock cut, finished film, any of that, movie, TV series, and push it through. It's bumped up against, in their machine learning model, it's bumped up against 60,000 titles. And what's cool is they tout 88% accuracy, So when you hear that, you can't go wrong with that data point. So it almost forces you to say, well, you know what? I'm going to head-to-head that, and I'm going to test that against my own survey or market research that I'm typically used to. That might take 3 to 6 weeks, and in this case, it takes 1 week. So, I'd say, show me the business value and give me a good claim. And I typically see, organizations that go from POC to scalability that way.
Follow the money.
I would just to add that part of what I was saying is transforming your organization. The entire AI is transforming the entire workflow process. I know amongst Flow, for example, that's something that we have worked together. A little plug in there, it works. It's the whole Flow process. We know that it is creative diversification is the name of the game in order to maximize the discovery engine and the power of AI distribution systems. More diversified content, the better the machine is to connect the right content to the right audience at the right time. So you need to produce more constant content. Gen AI comes into the process. You have to be faster, better, quicker, and in the correct cost. So using multimodal, for example, you can actually unearth from not only your campaigns, but also the industry, not only the typical aspect ratio, what works better, what didn't work, but also the thematic like emotions or motivations. Based on all that information, then you can start using AI to ideate, and you ideate different ideas, different what we call systems of ideas. Of course, surrounding and organizing principle, okay, which is what you call a little bit more this brand guidelines, but you're talking about more like what we call the ethos of the brand. Something flexible enough to be flex in multiple ideas and multiple time. And then with all the Gen AI tools that we have in Adobe, for example, is a great example to create, and the creative class has Adobe, as a brand that has been since the beginning with us to create multiple executions, put it into the system, and in Meta, for example, of 1P products, you can then create more content, more different text, image expansion, so it's fluid throughout this interconnected system. So AI is completely transforming the entire workflow process.
Love the metaphors that you're using, like the organic, biological, flowing metaphors, I think are right for how we should be thinking about the new workflows that we're designing. Bianca, NVIDIA were kind enough to invite us to Jensen's keynote at the start of this week, so thank you for that.
My pleasure.
That was cool. Obviously, a lot of the conversation there was about agents, and that seems to be, it seems to me like we're just getting up to speed collectively with the impact of the most recent wave of Gen AI, and now the game's changing again. So I just wonder if any of you, I guess sort of two questions. One, are you thinking about agentic workflows specifically? And then two, how are you thinking about or advising your partners to make the right moves in a landscape that is still undefined, right? We don't know where this is going. There could be a major breakthrough tomorrow, that we could hit a plateau in the capabilities of the foundation models that last for a significant period of time. We don't know how far this is going to go or necessarily how fast. So it's an inherently dynamic and unstable landscape. How are you thinking about that? How are you all coping with that?
Yeah, I think agentic AI is here. We got to ride that wave. And I think so much, I go back to Daniel Kahneman's work, behavioral economists, and I think it's so system one. It's so intuitive, it's so fast, like you get it, right? It's very different than ChatGPT where you have to get your thought out, type it out. Like this is potentially you learning and talking to this agent and it servicing you. So I think we're there. And I think, it's, as a DevRel person, I'm going to have to manage those conversations with my partners and coach them into it and say, it's going to be all right. Let's do this together. And I think it really is test and learn and figure it. There's going to be bumps in the road for sure. Mm-hmm.
It will be bumpy. Varun, did you want to go?
Yeah, no, I think at Adobe, we are embracing agentic architecture in a big way. In fact, a lot of our applications, including the one that I mentioned, Gen Studio for Performance Marketing, is already taking advantage of that. I think the example we were talking about brand, we actually have an agentic architecture where there's one agent that actually looks at your brand guidelines, a Word document, PDF, PowerPoint, what have you, extracts out all of the key attributes. There's another agent that actually then says, okay, once the content is created, I'm going to evaluate and grade every single piece of what was generated by the first agent and then give an overall score. But that's not where we're stopping. We're also actually adding in explainability, which I think is a core principle of responsible AI, is that when the agent actually is giving you a score for how this content is going to perform or how it meets the guideline, it actually explains across all of the attributes why did it give a particular score. So that's a great example of a real-world implementation that we've rolled out to our customers where people are actually finding a lot of value.
I liked your point about not just one agent that does the whole task end to end, but potentially multiple agents with different points of view working together in a system, adversarially, collaboratively, define it how you will, to create outcomes at scale. Is that how you're thinking about it?
Exactly. That's how it is.
All right. Orchestrating intelligences is how we're talking about it, at least at Monks. I want to thank the great speakers that we've had on our panel. Thank you very much, everyone. We've heard from everyone from the experiences and expressions end of the value chain to the insights and infrastructure part of the value chain. I can't resist plugging Monks. I think the only thing that we are maybe missing in that conversation is about orchestrating and integrating the systems. And that's the last piece, I think, of the puzzle for enterprise transformation that our partners are looking for. That's the role that we're trying to fill. So in that note, I'm obviously really excited. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.